If you remember the show Family Affair, you definitely remember Buffy. The adorable, pigtailed twin with her beloved Mrs. Beasley doll who charmed an entire generation. She was America's sweetheart, the giggling, gap-toothed little girl living a fairy tale life in a fancy Manhattan penthouse with her twin brother Jody, older sister Sissy, their loving Uncle Bill, and the proper but kind butler, Mr. French. For 5 years, from 1966 to 1971, millions of us invited the Davis family into our homes, and at the very heart of it was Buffy, a character who seemed to represent a perfect, carefree childhood, but the reality for the young actress who played her, Anissa Jones, was a world away from the TV screen. While Buffy was wrapped in warmth and security, Anissa was navigating the nightmare of a bitter family breakdown. While Buffy's problems were tied up in a neat little bow every 30 minutes, Anissa's were just beginning, spiraling into a darkness she would never escape. The smiling girl whose face sold millions of lunchboxes and dolls was living a life that was anything but a fairy tale. This is the heartbreaking story of what happens when fame finds you too young, the devastating pressures that can dismantle a life, and the tragic chain of events that led to an unthinkable death at just 18 years old. This is the story of what happened when the cameras stopped rolling. Before she was Buffy, she was Mary Anissa Jones, born March 11, 1958, in Indiana. Her beginnings were a world away from the Hollywood soundstages that would one day define her. Her parents were smart and educated. Her father held a degree in engineering and her mother was a zoology student. After Anissa was born, the family moved to Charleston, West Virginia for her father's work. It was there her younger brother, Paul, was born in 1960. Her mother, who was of Lebanese heritage, gave her the beautiful middle name Anissa. There's some debate about its meaning. Many sources say, Anissa, is an Arabic name for little friend, while others believe it's a version of Agnes, meaning immaculate. Either way, it was a name full of hope for a girl who would spend so much of her short life feeling utterly alone. Soon after Paul's birth, the family moved again, this time across the country to Playa del Rey, California, so her father could take a job in the aerospace industry. This was the move that sealed Anissa's fate. California was the land of opportunity, but for the Jones family, it was where everything started to fall apart. Almost as soon as they arrived, Anissa's parents' marriage crumbled, ending in a nasty divorce in 1965, a year before Family Affair even aired. It wasn't just a breakup, it was the start of a long, ugly custody battle that would haunt Anissa and her brother for years. They were dragged back and forth between their parents, used as pawns in a war they couldn't possibly understand. Ironically, this instability is what pushed Anissa into the spotlight. The divorce left her mother, Mary, needing to support her children. A neighbor suggested she get Anissa into acting, pointing out how much her own child was making from commercials. It wasn't about a dream of stardom, it was about financial desperation. And so, at 6 years old, after booking just a few commercials, Anissa's natural charm caught the eye of TV producers. She was about to land a role that would make her famous, a career literally built on the rubble of a broken home. In 1966, an 8-year-old Anissa Jones was cast as 6-year-old Ava Elizabeth Buffy Patterson Davis in a new sitcom called Family Affair. Because she was small for her age, she was a believable twin for Johnny Whitaker's Jody. The show's premise was pure comfort food television. 3 orphaned kids are sent to live with their rich, bachelor Uncle Bill, played by Brian Keith, and his butler, Mr. French, played by Sebastian Cabot. It was a story about creating a new family from the ashes of tragedy, and America absolutely loved it. The show was a monster hit. Within a year, Family Affair was at the top of the ratings, and Anissa Jones was a household name. Buffy, with her pigtails, her grin, and her signature doll, Mrs. Beasley, became a cultural icon. The merchandise machine fired up, churning out coloring books, lunchboxes, and clothing lines. The Mrs. Beasley doll, created just for the show, became one of the most popular toys in the country. Anissa Jones wasn't just a little girl on a TV show anymore, she was a brand, but behind the scenes, life was anything but child's play. The production schedule for a network show in the 60s was a brutal grind. Anissa often worked grueling hours, sometimes 7 days a week, leaving zero time for a normal childhood. She went to school on the studio lot, ate her meals there, and sometimes even slept there between takes. When she wasn't filming, she was being shuffled to public appearances and talk shows. This wasn't a treat, it was a contractual obligation, the pressure was immense. Her on-screen uncle, Brian Keith, a father himself, became a surrogate dad to her on set, a rare source of warmth in a life where her real father was being kept at a distance by the custody war. But even on the set of her wholesome show, there were disturbing signs of the industry's dark side. As Anissa started to mature into a preteen, producers were desperate to keep her frozen in time as the forever 6-year-old Buffy. Her co-star, Kathy Garver, later revealed a shocking detail. For a time, producers had Anissa's chest professionally bound to hide her development and maintain the illusion. Imagine being a young teenager and being literally strapped down to keep you from growing up. Anissa grew to hate it, the short dresses, the pigtails, and especially Mrs. Beasley. She was a teenager who just wanted to be a teenager, and you could see it in her performance. In the later seasons, the spark just wasn't there, the one pure relationship in her life seemed to be with her little brother, Paul. She adored him and was fiercely protective, often bringing him to the set. She made sure he never felt left out by her fame, insisting that if she got a gift, Paul had to get one too. It was a small thing, but it showed the kind soul underneath the Buffy persona, a girl who, more than anything, just wanted a real family. In 1971, after 5 seasons, CBS suddenly canceled Family Affair. The network was in the middle of its infamous rural purge, getting rid of family-friendly shows to make room for edgier content. For 13-year-old Anissa, this should have been a moment of liberation. It was a chance to finally stop being Buffy. She was ready to move on, to prove she was a serious actress, but Hollywood only saw one thing: Buffy. She was trapped in the typecasting prison. She auditioned for the role of Regan in The Exorcist, a dark, complex part that could have shattered her good girl image forever. But the director, William Friedkin, reportedly passed because he felt audiences would only ever see her as the sweet little girl from TV. The role, of course, went to Linda Blair. Her old co-star, Brian Keith, offered her a part on his new show, but Anissa refused. She was done with sitcoms. She felt completely stuck, frustrated. Anissa decided to turn her back on Hollywood and try to have the normal life she'd been denied. She enrolled in high school, hoping to just blend in. But how do you blend in when your face has been on TV for 5 years? To earn money, she took a job at a donut shop. It was a humbling gig, and she was reportedly mortified whenever a customer recognized the famous child star serving them coffee. She was desperately trying to build a new identity, but the ghost of Buffy Davis was everywhere. Meanwhile, her family life was still a mess. The custody battle had never really stopped. In 1973, a judge finally awarded full custody of both Anissa and Paul to their father. For a moment, it must have felt like a lifeline. At 15, Anissa and her brother moved in with their dad, hopeful for a fresh start. But that glimmer of hope was about to be snuffed out in the cruelest way possible. On March 7, 1974, just 4 days before Anissa's 16th birthday, her father died of heart disease. He was only 44. The one person who might have provided some stability was gone, and his death sent Anissa into a freefall. She refused to go back to live with her estranged mother, so while her brother Paul did, Anissa moved in with a friend. Without a stable home, her life unraveled. According to some reports, the state of California stepped in and made Anissa a ward of the court. She was adrift, bouncing between friends' houses with no one to provide any real support. She started skipping school and her grades tanked. When she'd run away for days at a time, her mother would file missing person reports, which eventually led to Anissa being arrested and sent to juvenile hall. the months she spent in state custody didn't help, they likely made things worse. When she was released, she fell in with a rough crowd, finding a sense of belonging with other troubled kids who were turning to drugs and petty crime. She started shoplifting, and her drug use escalated. She was a forgotten child star, spiraling out of control. Then came the moment that sealed her fate. On March 11, 1976, Anissa turned 18. This was the day she inherited her earnings from Family Affair, a trust fund worth somewhere around $180,000. For a teenager with no guidance and a serious drug problem, it wasn't a lifeline, it was gasoline on a fire. Her co-star Kathy Garver later recalled attending Anissa's 18th birthday party, where Anissa's worried mother pulled her aside and said, "I really think that she's in with a bad group of people." Her mother's fears were spot on. The money was gone in a matter of months. Anissa bought a new car for herself and a truck for her brother. They rented an apartment together that became a non-stop party hub. The rest of the inheritance was blown on cars, clothes, and massive quantities of drugs for herself and her so-called friends. The money removed any last barrier to her self-destruction. On Friday, August 27, 1976, Anissa and her new boyfriend drove down to the beach town of Oceanside for a party at a friend's house. The partygoers were a mix of young people, some as young as 12 years old. It was a typical teenage beach party, but it was fueled by Anissa's money and a steady supply of drugs. According to people who were there, Anissa seemed detached, not her usual social self. Inside a bedroom, away from the main party, Anissa and a few others were taking a lethal cocktail. Friends later said they were using PCP, or angel dust, a powerful and unpredictable hallucinogen, and mixing it with cocaine and other drugs. Sometime in the early morning, her boyfriend claimed he checked on her and she seemed to be okay, just sleeping. He left her in the room to rest. The party eventually died down. Hours passed. The next morning, on August 28, a little before noon, her friends went to wake her up. They found her unresponsive. In a bizarre, panicked move that has never been fully explained, her friends reportedly dressed her body before they called for help. By the time paramedics arrived, it was far too late. Mary Anissa Jones was pronounced dead at the scene. She was 18 years old. The girl who was once America's brightest TV star had died in a dark room, surrounded by people who were too young or too high to save her. The official coroner's report was horrifying. The San Diego County coroner, Dr. Robert Creason, was so stunned by the toxicology results he called it one of the most massive overdoses he had ever seen. It wasn't just one drug. Her system contained a lethal combination of barbiturates, PCP, cocaine, and quaaludes. Near her body, investigators found a small vial of an unidentified blue liquid, a final, mysterious clue. Her death was officially ruled an accidental overdose. But the sheer volume of drugs pointed to a level of self-destruction that was hard to fathom. The investigation quickly turned to how an 18-year-old got her hands on so much prescription medication. Police traced a prescription for Seconal found at the scene to a Dr. Don Carlos Machis in Torrance, California. It turned out Dr. Machis was already under investigation for running what was essentially a legal drug dealing operation, or a pill mill, writing over 100 prescriptions a day to young people. Dr. Machis was charged with illegally prescribing drugs to Anissa and, more seriously, with second-degree murder in her death. But he would never face a jury. The doctor, who was elderly and sick, died of cancer just 4 months after Anissa did. The murder charges were dropped. Anissa's family later sued his estate and was awarded a small settlement, but in a final, heartbreaking insult, the court found Anissa 70% responsible for her own death. The tragedy didn't end there. Anissa's beloved brother, Paul, who had endured the same traumatic childhood, also fell deep into addiction after his sister's death. On March 15, 1984, 4 days after what would have been Anissa's 26th birthday, Paul died of a drug overdose. He was only 24. Over the years, the string of tragedies connected to the show led to talk of a *family affair *curse. A year after Anissa's death, Sebastian Cabot, who played Mr. French, died of a stroke. In 1997, Brian Keith, the show's loving patriarch, died by suicide after battling cancer and depression. Even Johnny Whittaker, Anissa's on-screen twin, struggled for years with addiction before finding sobriety. But calling it a curse is too easy. It lets everyone off the hook. This wasn't a curse, it was the real-world consequence of unresolved trauma and a Hollywood system that can chew up and spit out its most vulnerable. Anissa Jones's story is more than just another sad Hollywood tale. It's a brutal cautionary tale about the price of fame, especially when it's forced on a child. The world saw Buffy, the smiling symbol of innocence, but it failed to see Anissa, the lonely, hurting girl who was desperately searching for the kind of love and stability her character had every week on TV. Her tragic end at 18 wasn't the result of one bad night. It was the culmination of a life of pressure, instability, and pain that began the moment her childhood became a commodity. Anissa Jones deserved a chance to grow up, to find out who she was outside the shadow of a TV character. She deserved a family affair of her own, one built on love, not contracts. And while she'll forever be remembered as the little girl with the pigtails and the doll, her story forces us to look past the fiction and see the fragile human being behind it, a bright light who burned out far, far too soon. If you found this story meaningful, please consider subscribing for more deep dives into the stories that shaped our culture. Thank you for watching.